So funny, every time I tell people from America I'm from Canada, especially on stage, immediately, how's it going there,
You want a war? Or do you want to just give me a war?
There's a new NBA champion, and it's a team from Toronto, Canada. Oh!
This is the Prosciutto Masala podcast.
All right. Welcome back to Prosciutto Masala, episode 3, Tuesday, February 16th. Rob, how are you, man?
I'm feeling pretty good, brother. The COVID fatigue is starting to get to me a little bit, man. It's been tough not being able to hang out with you and do normal social things, and it's
bare knuckle box. The shit,
you know what I mean?
Get up to.
It's tough, yeah. So,
man,
how about you, man?
Another, like, for our listeners, another dreary weekend. Just balls cold, snow, ice. Okay, so we had a little bit of family day, which is great. Feel a little bit rested. Valentine's Day, I want to talk to you about that in a second too. Yeah, man, same old. This is episode 3 for us, so I want to shout out to the folks who've commented on our YouTube page. We've been reading those. Much love. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for subscribing. So
Absolutely.
looking for your feedback. Every episode, holler at us. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know how we can make this show better. So appreciate we got some love already. Rob, what's going on with our Raptors, man? What's going on? I don't know if you're watching, but we're barely making the playoffs.
Yeah, dude. So in regards to the Raptors, honestly, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been watching much, but I really think that it's going to be hard for us to kind of have a W again or win the big championship if unless we have a guy like Kawhi, or we have kind of like a top 10 player. Like, I'm a diehard Raps fan. I know you are too. But we need one of those guys that's like, just when 10 seconds is left on the clock, we give him the ball and we know it's going to be taken care of. And unfortunately, as good as DeRozan was, as good as Lowry is, they aren't those guys. And until we get one of those guys, I think we're going to have a hard time winning another championship.
Yeah, so we are. I'm just looking at the table. We are 8th. So if the regular season ended today, we're still in the playoff hunt. I think we're playing Milwaukee today.
Okay.
Dude, you just said actually, I want to get on a soapbox for a second. I'll use your segue there. When you said you're embarrassed, dude, I've known you for more than 15 years. You've been a Raptors fan from day one. So you don't have to feel embarrassed about anything, dude. Okay, so here's my soapbox. I'm bringing it back to something. We won a championship in 2019. Arguably, you and I, like one of the biggest feats of Toronto professional sports we'll probably see in our lifetime.
Definitely.
For fans that have been kind of there since day one, seeing this thing come to our city, our city win a chip, amazing, right? Like, truly, I look back at 2019, one of the best moments of my life. Let's watch. Like, it's crazy, man. Like, you and I have had such an emotional connection with this team. So fast forward to where we are now, 2 seasons after that, dude. As a Torontonian, I love the Raptors love. I love the love for basketball in Canada, but I am seeing a little bit of the bandwagon, man. I don't know about you. I don't want to call people out, but I am seeing some fans maybe might have supported a Toronto sports, a hockey team, a very, 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 very well-known Toronto hockey team. Maybe they hadn't tasted success with that franchise. Kind of came over the bandwagon. We're more than happy to have you on the bandwagon here. So we got a lot of new fans in Toronto, Raptors fans, all of a sudden, right? I'm hearing a lot of riffraff, a lot of chatter.
Go. What makes you say that? I'm curious. Like, what are you hearing some stuff on social media? Or is there people talking to you in person that are saying things? Or what is it? Because for me, I feel like it's been a slow growth of increase in Raptors fandom over the past 5 years. Ever since we started doing a lot better in the playoffs. So I personally haven't really seen that.
I think a little bit of both, man. I think some people from my own circle, right? I'm not going to name any names, but I know people in my circle that I know weren't basketball fans to begin with, and I know they, let's be honest. In 2019, everyone became a basketball fan. My mom was watching the playoffs, right? We're rattling off names, right? So all I'm saying is great for the sport, but you've got some folks that, like in my social circle, definitely in social media. So I follow a few, House of Highlights, whatever basketball Insta accounts. I'm seeing a lot of vocal Toronto Raptors fans saying, "Hey, extreme decisions, man. Like, we got to get rid of the coach. We got to get rid of Nick Nurse. We got to sack this guy, that guy." What I'm saying, my rant is, there's a lot of folks talking about basketball moves, right? not even fundamental basketball, but basketball general manager moves without understanding the sport, without understanding how the league works, without understanding how the NBA works. It's a little bit annoying, right? I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. End of the day, I think, hey, it's a tough feat to win a basketball championship in the NBA with how one-sided the league can be with American sports teams and franchises, getting free agents there, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want to say, quick PSA, hey, old Raptors fans, new Raptors fans, let's just appreciate we had a good run. I'm not saying let's settle for mediocrity, because I do want us to get back into competitive basketball, okay, but just understand where we came from. Anyways, I'm done with my soapbox. I know we want to talk about basketball in Canada. And Rob, you're a baller. We know through and through. You actually can't play ball. You're nice on the court.
I try.
This guy's being modest. I've seen him break ankles at the Y. Question for you. So what do you think the Raptors have done for Canadian basketball? What have you seen as a basketball player, kind of coming through the ranks? What's changed in the last 20 years or so?
That's a big question. I think, so much. I think for me, it started with, and I think for a lot of people, with Vince Carter. I think Vince Carter is kind of, arguably, you can say, the kind of Michael Jordan of Canada, so to speak. I think one of the great documentaries of Canadian documentaries I'm really proud of is The Carter Effect. Mm-hmm. Not sure if you've seen that, P, but definitely recommend it. But it kind of, ever since Carter got drafted to the Raps, I know for me growing up, playing ball, especially playing in tournaments in the States and whatnot, I kind of would shy away a little bit from being Canadian, and because I felt like, okay, maybe Canadian sports aren't as good as the US, and it kind of, you felt a bit timid. But when Carter started playing, it kind of made you a lot prouder to be like, okay, you know what, we have like this amazing player. And I didn't even realize how amazing he was until really after. I think you kind of, I kind of knew, but until you sometimes see now, and you look back at a lot of the tape, like his dunks, dunking over, you know what I mean? Yeah. Dunking over the 7-foot guy in the Olympics, and his 360 dunks and the dunk competition. Yeah. For me, it made me really proud to be from Toronto, and it kind of started to put a bit of the spotlight on Toronto and Canadian basketball, and people realize, there's something going on here, right? Even though Carter was an American, born in Florida, it was kind of like he a lot of people, bash him for leaving, and I know there was a lot of politics in his last few years. With him to leave and all that stuff. But you know what? He did so much for Canadian basketball. Yep. And for me, it was, I think if we didn't have a player like that, it would have been a lot harder even now for us to get a lot of American talent to Toronto.
Canadian, true. I definitely agree with everything you're saying. The man was a legend, right? Like there wasn't sure we had a few maybe Canadian players. We had Steve Nash, right? Like we had a little bit of Canadian talent. But nobody as dominant, like with a personality, to your point, right? Like MJ style personality. At one point, right? Like when I was growing up and you were growing up, he was going to be the next MJ at the time in his peak, right? Yeah. A guy who was just so dominant, had that swagger, right? Like he was just a franchise player to play in our city. I think when I look back, you and I were probably, 12 to 15, right? You were well on your way of being like and for people who don't know, Rob played competitive, I'd say rep basketball, is that right? Basketball in Ontario, which is like AAU equivalent, kind of, right? So it's kind of a big deal here. So you're already like well on your way of becoming a basketball player. But then there's probably some cats a lot younger than us seeing Vince play, really get into basketball at the right time. I think you're starting to see a lot of that, right? You're starting to see your Andrew Wiggins. I was going to say Anthony Bennett, not so. I can't think of another guy right now.
Jamal Murray.
I was looking for a specific profile guy. Jamal Murray, like these guys that are just well-rounded superstars in their own right, and these guys were a lot younger than us. Seeing Vince play in Toronto, right? So I think it's like seeing that basketball brought to Canada. Number one, huge, and then number two is like all these Canadians that grew up watching him play, saying, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to be a basketball. I want to be a basketball player, right? I want to make it to the league." We're starting to see that now. I know you're not as close to basketball as you were, when you were younger, but like, what have you seen for infrastructure? right? Because and just as an outsider, I'm starting to see like how competitive some of these programs are. Like there's a little bit more funding. Like we're staffing up to be a country that can be a huge exporter to the NBA.
Yeah, no, it's you're seeing a lot more, training camps. You're seeing a lot more like kind of development, especially with the Raptors. I mean, even before the Raptors kind of won the championship, but people are realizing that there's a lot of talent here. It just unfortunately it's kind of been untapped because we focused on hockey for so long, and now I think people started to realize that you know what, we're a very multicultural city and country. But there is a lot of people that come here from all over the world. Maybe immigrants, maybe the offspring of or second, third generation of immigrants,
Yeah,
and they're growing up. And basketball's, I would argue, I'd read this somewhere, but it is growing in popularity so much that it may even surpass hockey to a certain degree
yeah,
in Canada, right? So for me, I'm starting to see it's kind of nice, a lot more Canadian content in terms of basketball coverage. You got a lot more Canadian kind of training camps and
yeah.
recruitment camps for kind of young high school players and even elementary school players. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's just going to get better and better, and I'm really proud, like I said, of
Yeah.
even the few Canadians I know, even like Nick Stauskas, a Lithuanian brother of mine from
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
from Mississauga, actually. I know
That's
I think
right.
he's only been in the league like maybe three,
Yeah,
4 years
he's
now.
been playing for the
But
905 now. Yeah, he's back in the hometown.
oh,
Yeah,
is he? Oh, I didn't
yeah,
know
he is.
that.
Yeah. So I'm hoping he cracks the Raptors roster because the 905 is Torontonians know like the 905 is one of the reasons we won a championship, right? Like sure we had Kawhi, sure we had
Oh, yeah,
team, but we had infrastructure in Toronto supplying like these G leaguers back into the NBA.
yeah,
But kind of coming back to what you said, I agree as a like a lifelong basketball fan. Canada always had the talent. Canada is now being seen as another market, and Canadian, I would say Toronto basketball has a bit of an identity, and I think that's going to help. First of all, for the success of the league, another market for them to expand to. It's great
yeah,
for the Toronto Raptors franchise. Like people, I always thought it was bullshit when people said free agents didn't want to play or it's too cold, all that stuff. Like Chicago's there, right? There's Chicago, there's Milwaukee, there's cities that are much colder than Toronto that have been, like premier destinations for a while. So I never thought it was about the weather. I do agree it's going to be tough, with the passport. Like from a league perspective, playing in Toronto, like DeMar said it, a few other players have said in the past, like, hey, it's tough. But Toronto's just getting its own identity as a place where basketball is loved, it's appreciated. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And we were talking about Lowry earlier. We were talking about DeRozan. And then who's your favorite? Okay, here's a question for you. Who is the all-time Raptors goat?
Oh,
Go.
like I said, for me, man, it's
Still Vince? You're still Vince, eh?
still Vince, man, for
Okay.
what he
Okay.
did for Canadian basketball and Toronto
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah.
He I think had gotten us with him. It might have been. I know David Stoudemire at the time was doing pretty good for us. He was rookie of the year back in like 95, 96. I remember like
Yep.
my first Raptors game, dude, was I'll never forget, was
Nice
at
house.
the Sky Dome,
Yep.
and my uncle took me there.
Was that the
Um,
Bulls game, dude? Was that the day we played Jordan?
that was the day we played Jordan, and it was crazy. He was
Yes.
running the 4-5, and I'll
Yep.
never forget. I was staying at my uncle's place, and my cousin was really young at the time. He was maybe like 12, 13. And so we waited for my cousin to go to bed, and then we snuck out. My uncle took me to a Raps game, and it was something I'll never forget. Like every time Jordan got the ball, people were just clapping because he was already a legacy at that point, right? It was like he had
Yeah.
come back, won his rings, and all that. So, but anyways, I digress for a sec. But
Who won? If I remember correctly, Toronto won that game, right?
you know what? That I don't remember.
I think so, man. Dude, I know this, man. You were at the game. Well, like that was one of our very first games at the Sky Dome. Yeah, man. Dude, we beat that. Would have been the '97 Bulls team, I think.
It was a good team.
We,
It was, even us, we had, I
yeah,
think,
man.
Marcus Camby at the time. We
Doug
had, I
Christie,
can't believe I
was Doug
remember
Christie there?
Doug Christie. We
Yeah,
had, I think, Antonio Davis.
that's crazy.
We had, who else? I don't know if we had T-Mac at the time. I think it was a bit before T-Mac, but
I think it got in through a couple seasons before. Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
had an
That's
amazing team. But yeah, man, for me, to answer your question, I think it's Vince. You had a lot of players after him that kind of did different things. Obviously, DeRozan did a lot for our city. Lowry,
yeah,
I gotta give props to him for
yeah,
how long he stayed loyal to our city. I'm sure he could have went elsewhere if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But then some of the OG, Raptors too, like Muggsy Bogues and
Yeah.
Tracy McGrady and Antonio Davis. We had an amazing team. I even think, to be honest, like we could have, if Vince Carter would have made that shot
Yeah.
against Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I think we could have been in the running for a championship. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd have to look up the data on this, but I think Vince at the time had gotten us further than any other Raptor had, like in terms of like we had never gotten that far in the playoffs
Yeah.
before Vince.
Yeah, man. I think you're bang on. I think he got us to the second round and one shot away because our boy was. I think he was at his graduation. If that's actually what happened, then whatever. We'll give him the pass. He still has a lot of hate for that. Yeah, he was the guy. He was the guy to bring us that far until Kawhi made that shot in 2019.
Yeah.
It took us 20 years, more than 20 years to get beyond that. So actually, no, sorry, that's wrong. Very wrong. Before our listeners correct me, we did make it to the conference finals. We lost to LeBron and the Cavs.
Okay,
this was 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, yeah. So still about 20 years later, we got past the second round. Okay, so you're going with VC. Okay, I can't. That's a tough one, man.
Yeah, man. Like I have other players, for example, that are kind of probably my favorite Raptors players.
This is like a total podcast topic, right? Like it's such an armchair expert thing because it's like you're never comparing apples to oranges, right? Like you look at one guy in terms of like what he did for the sport versus what he did for the team versus scoring, etc. So it's hard to just saying who's the GOAT player of all time. You can't really compare, but it's fun. That's what podcasts are for. I'd say it's tough because Vince is up there, but I think I have to give it to Lowry, man. I think I have to give it to and of course it's always going to come down to the chip, right? And who brought the city a ring. I feel like at the end of the day, the man stayed was a founding part of the team that got us there, but also because the guy is Raptors, he is the new age Raptors identity, right? The scrappy point guard, undersized, right? Underrated, right? Just always has something in the tank, is clutch. That's if he's not our identity, that's who we want to be, right? Vince came in, when Vince was here, you could argue that, and I think he said this, he was the most athletic guy in his cohort, probably even more athletic than Kobe, but he didn't really work at it. This has been the knock on him, right? He could have really, if he applied himself, he didn't. And for that reason, dude, I would edge Lowry just a little higher. I would say because Lowry just gave it all, and he wasn't blessed with the gifts that Vince was, right? A shorter guy.
Yeah, I can't argue with that selection. That's a good selection. For me, I personally think that certain Raps. I know we're a young team, and a lot of Americans listening to the podcast may laugh because there a lot of the teams in the States, like the Lakers or the Knicks, whatever it is, they have a lot more history. But we're a young team. We've only been around 95, 96, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think little milestones for us, I think mean a lot more to me than say for there. For example, I think for us to win the championship was huge. I thought maybe the Jays would have won over would have been the next sports team to win over the Raptors. But I'm so proud that we did what we did, right? But I personally think, based on what your answer was, and based on my answer, I personally think that they should consider retiring both Carter's and Lowry's.
Yeah, dude, of course, man. That should have been done. Vince, they should have retired. I don't think they have. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they have. They should retire his number. Same with Lowry. I think they both probably need a statue at the Scotiabank Arena. 100%. By the way, when you were talking about other teams there for a second, for American fans, that I'm going to go back. I got triggered, dude. I got triggered a little bit, and I'm going to go back to my soapbox. Dude, this is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of fans in Toronto. You know who you are. During the day when we had fucking nobody, we had Chris Bosh, maybe, we had Jamario Moon was on our starting. Dude, these guys and girls, man, they walk around with a LeBron jersey, hey, I'm a Cavs fan, right? I'm a Lakers fan. Born and raised in Toronto. You know what, man? It was a trigger. It was a trigger. You know what? It's fine, man. It's fine. Join the bandwagon. Join Toronto.
You gotta almost think of it what's an analogy?
You're a better man than I am.
I know it's a little bit. Yeah, it irks me a bit, but you almost got to be you know what? If you got a person, if you're,
yeah,
you know what I mean? If your friend brings a friend to your house, say for dinner, and the friend of the friend is kind of a little bit of a dickhead. You don't really like the guy, but it's like, you know what? You're in my house.
Who we're talking about now.
Sorry, I'm trying to make an analogy about
I'm trying
inviting.
to find somebody we know. I'm trying to think, but no, you're making a joke. I know.
You know what I'm saying? Well, you just got to kind of welcome these people in and be like, you know what? You weren't a fan from the beginning, but that's okay. You know what? The more love, the better, because what that's going to do, the more attention that's on Canadian basketball, the more infrastructure and the more talent we're going to start to
You're right. It's all for the broader good. But you bandwagoners know who you are. Just kidding, all love. But the thing that I think, you were talking about this earlier, and this is the beautiful thing about Toronto, is that as the NBA grows, right, we're starting to see like, hey, the NBA broke into China a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, right? Like Africa is like the new market, and these guys want to play in Toronto, man. Like this is where you come to Toronto, and we talked about this in our first episode, right? Like Toronto has to be one of the most multicultural cities in the world, if not the, right? You come in here and you already have a fan base of, whatever country you came from, arguably, right? Your chances are higher in Toronto, right? Of having having that. I'm just making it up. If there's ever a player from Angola, like we have an Angolan community here, right? And they're tiny by all standards, but like, hey, you still have them come out, show you love. You can get some food here. Like you go to Scarborough, get some food. Like this is the benefit of having Toronto as like such a multicultural city. Back in the day, it was like everyone came from like a few cities in the States, right? With producing basketball talent. You had the Eastern European like powerhouses like producing their talent, and that was it, right? And like, yeah, sure, Andrea Bargnani loved playing for Toronto, right? Like he probably loved the JV, loved playing here, right? But like now you're starting to see talent from all parts of the world look at Toronto and say, hey, world-class organization, world-class team, right? Have championship pedigree, and also like think about the ties back to my community at home, right? Toronto's got that. So that's when I'm excited about that too, because we always knew this, like the NBA was going to expand. So like I love that it's taking its time in Africa now, and it's really developing. Dude, I want to see a brown baller. You know this, right? Simbola hasn't cut it for me. I'd love to see when like India, South Asia exports the next basketball talent. So it's exciting, man.
I think it's a matter of time before that happens. I think, especially with families and Toronto being as multicultural as it is, I think it's our generation and even our kids' generation that now we're going to start to take sports more seriously. Because let's be honest too, like we were still kind of raised in the generation. Like I know our parents were a little bit more kind of open-minded, but still we're kind of raised in the generation where there's certain expectations, and like to pursue sports almost professionally from a young age, it would kind of be like looked down upon, right? Where I feel like our future kids generation, it's like, you know what, if you want to pursue something and you're passionate about it, I think we're a lot more supportive and a little bit more open-minded in that regard than maybe our parents and grandparents' generation was, right?
Yeah, why not, right? Like you're growing up in Canada, like this is a thing that always bothered me, is like, let's not forget that basketball is a Canadian sport created by a Canadian, right? Like we got to bring that back here. Listen, like and we're so shaped by America. We're so shaped by American culture, and like basketball has become America's pastime other than baseball, right? And you can't argue with America like dominating the sport, but I love seeing it come back here, right? I love seeing, and like I want that recognition that, hey, we like this is kind of our game too. I know we're known for hockey, right? We're known for like winter sports, and that's always going to be a part of like Canadian fabric. But hey, we're also kind of a basketball nation, right? So
man.
I want to see
sure.
that.
I think you'd be surprised. I'd watched a YouTube video not too long ago, and you'd be surprised how many, not even just Americans, but even Canadians don't actually know that basketball was invented by a Canadian. They think it's like, just because the NBA is such a dominant American organization. Which is going to lead way into my next question, but a lot of people don't even know that. I was even shocked.
We haven't owned it though. I think, right? Like we as a country, like we're almost like we look at how we grew up with this game. It's like, hey, yeah, we invented it, but like we kind of pass it to the Americans. Say, like, you guys do a better job of this than we do, right? Like it's almost like we don't own it to say, like, I think we're starting to do it now. We're starting to say, hey, look at all the talent we're supplying the NBA. Like, hey, I think we're still in the qualification for the Olympics. Like we might make it. Right, like it's starting to build, like, and then there's schools, dude. Like, I want to get to your question in a quick second, but there's schools in Canada that are known for, solid. They can play Div 2, maybe even Div 1, like in NCAA. It depends on the conference. Like Carleton University, like it's underrated, like the basketball, like powerhouse basketball coaching. Yeah, man, like I feel like we just need to own it. But you had a question. You were going somewhere.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say in relation to this kind of tangent we're on
Mhm.
is do you think then as basketball is growing now in Canada, it's
Yeah.
kind of a two-part question. One is I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. When do you think we'll get another NBA team in Canada, and will
Oh,
it
good
be
question.
Vancouver again, or is it another possibly, maybe we expand in Toronto
Mm.
where it's a two team
Yeah.
market, kind of like LA.
That's a great question. You know me. I think we both love Vancouver, dude. Like we're both West Coast, even though we're born and raised in Toronto, but love West Coast, love Vancouver. Man, I just feel like the fact that Vancouver had one, and maybe like it wasn't the greatest success, and there's all sorts of reasons for why. Like if you read like the lack of success behind that team, so we could kind of point back and say, hey, if we do it again, we'll learn from our mistakes. We'll like really leverage Vancouver as a market. There's because
Do you,
you
do you
could.
know why they fail? Because I don't really know too much about why they. I know obviously it comes down to dollars and cents. Like they just probably weren't selling tickets, but
That's
I'm
basically.
surprised, to be honest. I was surprised.
Yeah, look, there's a bunch of reasons, right? Like just the way like the way they handled like TV rights and like like drove ticket sales. They weren't expanding. They weren't like really addressing the need for basketball like in broader regions. So like they could have tried to cling on to Western Canada, right? Like Calgary, Alberta. Like you see what the Raptors did the last couple of years. They've been saying we're Canada's team. So we have
Yeah,
two Canadian teams. It's almost like you should claim like, hey, we're Western Canada's team, we're Eastern Canada's team, and kind of expand. I don't know
yeah,
that Vancouver really did this. There's a bunch of other reasons too, and like there's probably so many other listeners. There's probably experts here and diehard like Vancouver basketball fans that would say, hey, no, I have it all wrong. But point was like we kind of failed at that. So I feel like the better chance is to do a city that hasn't been tested, but there's a lot of appetite, and then you look at just purely based on population size. I
mhm,
like what we're going with. Like, I think you could definitely say, like, 905, like, Mississauga could be its team on its own, right? Like, Mississauga is like a second tier US
I
city
agree.
in and of itself, right?
I
So,
agree. Yeah.
definitely, you got a lot of basketball fans, like, diehard, passionate basketball fans in Mississauga. That's one way to go. I actually think Montreal, man. Like, it's weird. Like,
Ooh,
you
you know what? I didn't think
yeah,
about that.
I think you're
Yeah,
starting to see like Montreal, like in the basketball market. You're seeing Chris Boucher. You're seeing, and that's just like the random example, but I know there are diehard basketball fans in Montreal,
mhm,
and it's just another. It'd be nice, right? Nice to have a like French speaking region, Canada, have a basketball team, have their own identity. I think that
yeah.
could actually sell. So that'd be my thought. Is I'd love to see like Montreal, Toronto. I'd love to see maybe even two Toronto. And then I also hear, dude, like out in the way east. So I know from a work partnership opportunity, like talking to some people in Newfoundland, like they love basketball there, and they had when I was there, they were talking about like a new team, local team they launched, and it's almost like a high school football in the States type of vibe there with basketball. So it's kind of crazy, but like I just think just when it comes down to pure numbers in the market size, like it's not big enough there. So I still have to come back to I'd say Montreal.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's definitely a possibility. I think it's just a matter of time and sizing. I think Canada we're a fraction of the population of the states, and as these major city centers grow, probably give it another 5, 10 years, I can definitely see that happening. I do think you're going to get the Grizzlies back in Vancouver eventually. I think it's just a matter of time because it's kind of like when the Jets came back to Winnipeg. It was like people went crazy, like, oh my gosh, they're back. It's like it's kind of very nostalgic, right? So I think you're going to have a lot of people that want to see that happen. And I think give Vancouver maybe another 5, 10 years, and I think you'll see the Grizzlies go back there.
So I just read some. While you were talking, I just googled it to fact check myself.
Mhm.
One of the first things that came up: how did Vancouver lose the Grizzlies? Apparently, Steve Francis publicly stated he did not like the city and did not want to move to Canada.
Yeah. So fact,
Yeah,
you may not know this, but he was actually
yeah.
drafted first by
By the
Vancouver, and
Vancouver,
he
yeah.
basically came up right after the draft. He's like, I don't want to go to Vancouver. I don't. And back to kind
Mm,
of like the whole Carter thing with Toronto. I think part of the reason that a lot of athletes now, it may sound trivial, but a lot of the athletes now are okay playing in Toronto is because dude, Carter made it kind of cool to
mm,
like play in Toronto, right? Like obviously with pop culture has a big influence. Like Drake has been a huge kind of like catalyst for helping the
yeah.
Raptors, popularity growth. I can say like he's obviously an ambassador, but I would say, man, that was a very smart move on the Raptors to bring Drake on board, because it may sound so trivial, dude, but players want to play in a city that's cool. They want to play in a city that's cool, and if you kind of come across as like this you know,
you're selling a lot. You're selling a lifestyle. Yeah,
right.
You're selling that whole like, hey, like it's got it like LA. Everyone loves LA because it's like you're playing with Hollywood's finest, right? Like celebrities, Jack Nicholson, blah blah blah. Whereas like that, Drake's doing a good job of bringing it pretty close to that in Toronto, right? Like he's got that OVO connection, major record label, global hip hop star, 100%. I'm just reading more about this. It seems like Vancouver really hurt from not having a franchise player, and I think when you have someone like Drake. Albeit like while he's been associated with the team, we've been pretty good, right? Like, but he didn't have to carry it fully on himself. But conceivably, if we lost all our all-stars and we were a shit team, Drake could still sell tickets, man. You know what I mean? Like he could still sell tickets and like keep lights on, right? I feel like
not just that. I think he'd be an active part of almost like, I know he got in trouble of like a little while back at OVO to try and he had said something at the OVO Fest to Kevin Durant to be like, hey man, when you can come play for us? And he got fined for that. The Raptors paid that fine, but he's very subliminally or kind of not blatantly, but he does it on a very low key scale where he makes it cool to be here, and that kind of attracts players here, right? So he's very good in terms of marketing for us.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so here's another question for you actually on that note. So obviously we're not getting Giannis, right? Giannis is not coming here. We got to turn our eyes. We got to figure out the next free agency season. But beyond that,
I think we should get Keon Clark back, bro.
Keon Clark.
Wasn't he drunk for like every game? Didn't he?
No,
I'm pretty sure he publicly came out saying he was drunk for every game.
There's a random Raptors trivia. Master P, I think, played or he signed a 10-day contract with the Raptors.
Yeah, something like that.
That man, Keon. Okay, no. Seriously though, like I want to get your thoughts. Who's the next superstar that you think will, just as a free agent, say, hey, I want to go to Toronto? I don't think we haven't had a high profile player say that yet. Other than the ones we've re-signed, but like I'm thinking, like I know Katie once said he was a Raptors fan. Like
I'm gonna say something, man, and I think people hearing this, and you're gonna think I'm crazy. People maybe think I'm crazy, but it's not far-fetched. I think give it maybe another 3-4 years, and in his last few years in the league, I think you could see possibly Steph Curry, man, coming to Toronto.
Oh, that's a good answer, man. That's very believable because his wife.
Yeah.
And dad.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize, but
Del Curry, his father, played many successful years for the Raps, and Steph has a big tie to Toronto. He loves Toronto. He's publicly come out and said it, and he was in actually I think the Carter Effect documentary. So he lived here all like his youth, like probably I think between 5 and 10 years. Growing up living in Toronto, his dad playing for the Raps, right? So I think you're going to see him. I mean, he's beloved in Golden State. Obviously, he's like, in my opinion, one of the top 3 players in the league right now. He's personally one of my top 3. But I think I would love to see. I don't know if it's unrealistic, but I think I know it's already in his head that he thinks Toronto is a cool city, and he has a lot of kind of nostalgic memories tied to the city. So I don't think it's out of the question to be like he wins maybe another 1-2 championships in LA in Golden State, and then maybe in his last few years before retirement comes in and plays in Toronto, man.
Dude, what you said is not crazy at all, man. That's actually the most believable free agent signing. I actually do. I disagree. I don't think they're going to win any more championships in Golden State. I think they're done, to be honest with you. But I do think that's a very good answer. The man pretty much grew up here in his formative years. Has a wife from Markham. It's pretty close to being really comfortable. Back to your roots, right? Like I can definitely see that, man. That would be a good one. I wonder if some of these Canadian guys like Jamal. My answer would be like I would love to see like Jamal Murray come back and play here. Of course, I saw him at the Pan Am Games in 2015, and he was maybe 17, 18, and this kid was just playing. He was playing against grown ass men. It was an Olympic. What did I just say? Sorry, Pan Am. Pan Am. It was a Pan Am game. So it was, playing with like other guys in the league at the time and like grown ass men. Like he was a kid, and you could already tell like he was a point guard. That he was already dominating. that was like he was in the league. I knew this kid was going to go far. Of course, I never would have called he was going to be this special, but I would hope a guy like this at some point, Jamal, man, just come back home, come back and play here. That'd be a great story.
You know, man, anybody, any Canadian, whenever we have Canadian kids playing on the team, man, we love it. We love it, right? It feeds into the whole, Canadian pride. When what's his name, Corey Joseph was on the team, people would love it when he was on the court, right? And the whole he fed into that a little bit more by having number 6 and being like the 6th man kind of thing, right? But I think, yeah, man, any Canadian that comes on the team is going to get tons of love. I'd love to see potentially Nick Stauskas. Who knows if that's going to happen. But we definitely need, back to what I was saying at the beginning of the convo, is that we work really well together, but we just don't have that it guy. We need a guy that's like that. Like I said, 5-10 seconds left, you give him a call, and he's going to score. DeRozan was great, but he was never that guy either. Like DeRozan, Lowry was never that guy. Lowry was always like a good number 2. Kawhi, we had that guy with Kawhi, and we're hopefully we're gonna, we need to find somebody else like that. There was, I know, rumors floating around for a bit that what's his name, the beard.
Harden, that's gone.
Harden was going to come here. That didn't work out, but we need one of those guys, because it's hard to win a championship without a guy that's in the top 10.
Dude, that's been the argument. I kind of see it another way. Like, I do see that, like, you need a bona fide scorer when the game slows down in the playoffs and you're just playing 5-on-5, like half court basketball. You need like a dependable guy, especially like when it's a close game. I do hear you, but I actually think that any one of our starters, so I'm talking like Norm, OG, Siakam, Lowry, can become that guy. I think I've seen the potential in all of those 4 guys, and they've like battle tested with the championship. I actually think it's like we need some more depth, man. I think losing Ibaka, losing Gasol, I think we may have thought they were past their prime and like weren't really adding that much value, but they were, and we're starting to see it with like we don't really have a good system of bigs, but I get what you're saying, man. Like with the Toronto guys, like the flack has always been rather that they don't show up consistently. Like any of those guys can light it up, drop 30, 10, like, you never know. But it's like you're right. Like when we had Kawhi, like you finally had someone there. And you and I were watching those playoffs in 2019, right? Like there was some crazy times, like classic Raptors basketball, right? You're ahead by like 16, and then slowly you start to give it away, stupid turnovers, things like that. But it's funny, like you just had Kawhi there, nothing seemed crazy. Like you come back, like you slowly, chip at it. Yeah, I agree, man. Like, and I think, I don't know, unless one of our guys like takes another leap again, like Chris Boucher, someone just really comes out and just like MIP type of player. Yeah, I kind of going back, kind of bringing back to our convo. I don't see the Raptors, finishing higher than 5th. I want to get your thoughts on this. Like this year, like I think that's their ceiling, and I think for the bandwagon. Sorry, bro, I don't have to hate on the bandwagon, but the bandwagons need to know though that it's part of the process, right? Like it's like you need to. We're gonna start to offload some of the guys that are like icons on our team, like Lowry. He's turning 35. Like there's biology, right? Like at the end of the day. These guys are legends, but you want to start to build for the future. And like there's going to be a transitionary period where we're going to probably not be as good. We're not going to finish top 4. We're probably not going to go past the second round. But like, hey, you got to trust in your management. And as a Toronto sports fan, man, I made fun of those hockey fans. I'm still a Leafs guy, right? I'm still a Leafs fan, and we know somebody who's a big Leafs fan as well, our buddy. But the point is that like I'm not saying settle for just garbage basketball again, right? Like just settle for like not making the playoffs and like that being the bar. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, hey, we won a championship. We're building something bigger, in my opinion. We're building like a San Antonio Spurs like culture, right? Where we're gonna get the right players somehow. We'll mold them. We're an energy chemistry kind of team. We're never going to be a market that's dominated by like 2 superstars, right?
I agree. I'm really proud of Van Vliet. I'm really proud of guys like Siakam. I think hopefully if they stay with the team, I've already seen like leaps and bounds from when even Van Vliet. I remember his first year playing on the Raps from 905. He seemed a lot more timid. Like if you go back and look at a lot of tape, he would drive and then he'd almost like get scared of the big man and like dish it or kind of fumble a bit. But ever since like the year that this last year even, and then leading up to the championship, being kind of battle tested in during the playoffs. He got a lot more confident where he'd body a lot more. He'd kind of drive the ball out more, not be afraid to shoot and be that guy that, has the ball when the clock is running down. And I think he learned a lot of that from Lowry, which is nice. But same with Siakam. Siakam kind of was starting a little bit rough, but then he got a lot more confident. And I think both those guys, if they stay with us, they could be huge assets.
Yeah. So lots more basketball to come. We got the All-Star game. I know that's a little bit polarizing with people saying, "Hey, we shouldn't have an All-Star game," but lots more basketball during this pandemic. So we'll see where the Raptors end up, and we'll keep tabs on them. Buddy, good session. Back again. Much love to our listeners. Love the feedback. Again, like if you like the content here, please do give us a subscribe. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're only going to keep this growing, so a lot of love to our listeners. That's it for us, Prosciutto Masala, episode 3. We will see you guys next time.
Thanks so much, guys, for listening. And again, hit that like, hit that subscribe. We can't tell you how much it helps us for the YouTube algorithm, getting us out there, spreading Canadian content. So please do that, and we will catch you next week.